All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Life with Gerardo, where we learn informal education by interviewing different business owners, different entrepreneurs, and just successful people and learn from their experiences and what they've gone through. I wanted to first off introduce myself. I appreciate everybody that has been listening to the show currently, but I also realized I haven't told you guys my story, who I am, what I do, and my whole overall goal of this podcast. So, originally, this podcast was called In the Valley, where I was interviewing just business owners here in Arizona, but I wanted to go back to my original idea, my original passion, and that's helping people with life experiences. That's not just real estate, that's not just personal finances, everything that you go through in life that you're not taught in school. So that's why I decided to rebrand my podcast and call it Life, where we learn informal education from different people, their experiences, what they've gone through, maybe their expertise in a certain industry. And that's the overall goal of my podcast, and that's my intention. My intention with the podcast is to eventually create some sort of e-course where you can become life certified. We'll put them in schools, send them to military branches, just get them all out there as much as possible and educate as many people as I can. That will be from social media to e-courses to the podcast to YouTube. That's the overall goal with this. Now, the goal is to have, of course, the e-courses, but also maybe one-on-one coaching, maybe specific coaching in different industries. Now, that's my reason why I rebranded the entire podcast and the reason why it will be called Life with Gerardo. So, wanted to get that out of the way, but also now that I did get that out of the way, why don't we go into my story and who I am and what I did to become financially free at 25 years old and what exactly I did. So, a little bit about me. I could start from the beginning. I'm originally born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Yes, I am a Denver Bronco fan, Denver Nuggets fan, all Denver teams. So, don't give me no hate. Anyway, so I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I moved to Arizona my junior year of high school, like my second half of the junior year. So I completed my second half of junior year here in Arizona and then all my senior year here in Arizona. I immediately I went into the military right after high school. So that was from 2 weeks after graduation I shipped off to basic training. I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I joined the army. In the army, I did HR specialist, so nothing crazy, nothing combat or anything like that. I was just in a desk all day. And I went to the military because my parents, they did not pay for college. So growing up, they told us you have to either get good grades where you can get a scholarship to pay for college, or you have to figure out another way to pay for college if that's the route you want to go. And my sister who was in the Navy, she seemed to have a pretty cool life. She was in Coronado, so out there in San Diego. She was living on a beach. She wasn't going to school, but if she wanted that, she definitely could because the military would pay for it. So I figured, you know what? Why not me go into the military, try it, see if I like it. Worst case scenario, I don't. I can get out and just go to school, and at least I get to have school for free. So that was my initial thoughts. I was in the military. Like I said, I joined right out of high school. I was, what, 17 or yeah, I joined at 17, and when I shipped off, I was 18 years old. So when I get back, I'm working my normal job. I have a consistent paycheck. I was stationed here in Arizona, so we don't have any housing. So I got to get what's called BAH, basic allowance for housing, and basic allowance for substance, I think it's called. Basically, where you get food allowance and a housing allowance. At the time, I was living with my parents. So it was pretty cool. I was able to stack a lot of money. They were only charging me $500 a month in rent. And so it was going pretty well. I've always had this drive to do different things. I did absolutely everything, and I'm grateful for my parents because they supported me through everything. As a little kid, I was selling sneakers, I was doing landscaping, cutting people's grass for extra cash, shoveling people's snow. At that time, when I was in the military, I had a little bit of extra money, so I discovered trading, day trading. I was doing foreign exchange market. I lost my ass. I lost a lot of money. I felt was a lot of money at that time. I was only 18 years old. It came up to around $10,000 is what I lost. I knew I wanted to do more. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew I wanted to do more. And when we moved here, we originally were renting from a landlord. His name was Robert. He actually is the guy that introduced me to real estate. And so initially, my parents bought the house that they were renting from him when we first moved here. And one day when I was driving home from work, Robert calls my mom and asks if my dad can help him with something. And at the time, I believe my dad was working or something, and I was on my way from home. I don't know. I don't remember the exact story. Anyways, all I know is I had to go help Robert with one of his rental properties. I went there and helped him with something. Robert's an older gentleman. He's 70 years old, so can't move as well. And so I had to help him with something. And when I went there, I went in my uniform. And Robert tells me, "Oh, wow, I didn't know you were in the military. You have a pretty good job." I'm like, "Yeah, I have a good job. It's going pretty well." He goes, "Well, do you own a house yet?" At this time, he just sold my parents their house maybe 6 months ago. I said, "No, I don't have a house. I just live with my mom." And they're like, "I could sell you this house." And I'm like, "I don't really need a house." But at the time, I did have a girlfriend and I was 18 years old. And I thought, "Oh, this is perfect. I can have my own place." And that's the way I feel like life goes. You get a job, you get your own place, and you grow from there. And so what he told me was, "Hey, I'll sell you this property and we won't have to hire a realtor. So since we don't have to hire a realtor, you're actually saving me money. So I'll discount the property for an additional 20,000." This was back in 2017. So I just said, "Okay." So I actually went to the bank. I had no idea exactly what to do, but Robert walked me through it. I went to the bank. I told them I was living there. At the time, they were doing what's called down payment assistance. So I actually didn't even need to pay any money for my down payment. All I had to do was pay $500 for an appraisal. I paid the appraisal. They gave me a loan. It was actually scary how simple they gave me a loan for, but it was cool because it was easy. And I truly believe, and now what I know today, they gave me a loan pretty easily because I had a guaranteed income. I was working for the government. I got paid on the 1st and the 15th. They knew exactly where my checks were coming from. So I got paid consistently, getting paid from the military, and they approved my loan. So I bought my first house for $150,000 in Surprise, Arizona. Little 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Now, I thought it was great. I bought it. I had a girlfriend. I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. My girlfriend can stay with me whenever." I'm young, so sometimes I may be thinking with the wrong head at 19 years old, but hey, it is what it is. It turns out her parents don't allow her to move out. They want her to finish college before moving out. So now I'm responsible for this whole house. I have to pay mortgage payment, utilities, buy my own food, cook my own food. I come from a Mexican household, so my mom took care of us where she's making our meals, doing our laundry, doing things where it's now I have to do all of this by myself. And my mortgage, I got to pay. Usually it's at least, I think it came up to about almost half of what my income was. I thought that was horrible. So literally, I bought all this furniture. I move into this place. I'm literally there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I call my mom and my parents. I say, "Hey, I want to move back. I don't want to do this." And they said, "Okay, yeah, that's fine." So I sold all my furniture and I call Robert and say, "Hey, Robert, I don't want this house anymore. I decided I'm not gonna live in it. Should I? Do I just sell it or what do I do with it?" He goes, "Oh, why don't you just go ahead and rent it?" I said, "Well, how do I do that?" He said, "Well, it's pretty simple. What's your mortgage payment?" At the time, it was like $1,200, and it was 1,100, and he says, "Just rent it for a little bit more than what your mortgage is." And I said, "Okay." So I literally put up a sign in front, as he instructed me, a for rent sign. I went and bought one from Home Depot. I rented it for $1,200, so literally $100 more than what my mortgage was. And that first property rented in 2 hours. I thought it was cool. I was making $100 a month from it without doing anything. The house was pretty much renovated, so there wasn't much maintenance. I didn't know what I know now. Obviously, I was giving them a pretty damn good deal. Clearly, if it rented for 2 hours, in 2 hours. So that was it. That's how I got my first rental property and my first entry into real estate. I had no idea what I was doing. I still had no idea what real estate was. And I just kept working. I was working my normal job until 6 months later, Robert calls me again and says, "Hey, I have another house for you to buy. Do you want to come take a look?" It was in Surprise, same price, same 3 bedroom, 2 baths, 1,200 square foot, right down the road from the other one. And I told him, okay. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing at this time. I just knew that buying real estate from a little bit of the research that I did was pretty good, tend to be a good investment in the long run. So I say, okay, sure, I'll buy this house from you. Same thing, gives me a discount. I go to the bank, tell them, hey, I want to buy this house. I figured it was the same thing. But they tell me, hey, you just bought a house 6 months ago. You can't buy this house. The only way you could buy this house is if you have 20% down. 150,000, I'm 19 years old. That's $30,000. I only make $45,000 a year. So there's no way I had $30,000 in the bank. So I go to Robert and I let him know this. And he says, okay, that's fair. Why don't you bring me $5,000 and I'll take care of the rest? So at the time, I had a credit card. I did a cash out refi or a cash advance on my credit card. It was like, I think it got me like $3,500 or something like that. And then I sold my car to get the extra $1,500. I got the $5,000. I met him at a title company and I gave him $5,000 and he did what's called the seller carry or a seller finance or a seller carryback. There's multiple ways to call it. Basically, what he did was I gave him $5,000 for down payment and he carried the loan for me. So instead of me paying the bank my monthly payments, I was paying Robert my monthly payments, but I still owned the property. I had no idea how powerful seller finance was or what seller carry was. But this time, I knew that I wasn't going to live in it right away and I knew I was going to rent it. So I thought I was pretty savvy. So what I did was instead of renting it for $100 more than the mortgage, I decided to rent it for $200 more. I rent it for $200 more. I rented in about a week. I think I'm a genius because now I'm making $300 a month. And now I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. My car payment was like $300 a month. So these rentals were taking care of my car payment. So I thought, you know what? Let's look into this a little bit more. But I also want to ask Robert, like, how did he just randomly have two houses? One day I take Robert out to lunch and I just straight up ask him, hey, Robert, what do you do for a living? And he says, I'm a landlord. And I said, what does it pay? He tells me it pays me $30,000 a month. And immediately I was like, can you teach me? And from that day forward, I started, listening to podcasts, reading books, learning all I can about real estate, asking him questions. And fast forward today, I now own 7 rental properties. I'm now no longer in the military, and I could get into that as well. So, moving forward with my real estate journey, I was living in Surprise and my job was in Scottsdale. So, it's about an hour away drive. I was tired of doing this drive. So, what I decided to do was buy a little condo. And I truly was going to live in it, but only during the week, or I wanted to just cut down my commute. And I was single, so I wanted to get a little condo down in Scottsdale. I think I was at like 21 at this time or 20. So I decided to buy a condo and I would live in it. And it was great because I was only 5 minutes away from work. I was saving money for gas, saving a lot of time. But I still had to pay a mortgage payment. And it just sucked. I couldn't. And my mortgage was only like $1,200. It just sucked paying $1,200 a month. I hated it. So I discovered what's called Airbnb, and I realized that you can rent your property for a short-term amount of time. So what I decided to do was I already had it furnished. I took some I didn't even hire a professional photographer. I just took photos from my phone. I put it up on Airbnb, but I only put the condo up from Friday to Monday. So what I did was I lived in the condo during the week and I rented the condo on the weekends. And on the weekends, I would just go back and live with my mom and dad. And this was great because I was only renting it on the weekend. And on Friday or Monday, I would go clean the property. And then before I left on Friday, I would make sure that it was cleaned for the guests checking in. So I did that and I was making more than what my mortgage payment was and some just renting for the weekends. That's when I knew, oh wow, I'm on to something. I decided to move all my stuff out, my personal belongings, and now rent it full time. And that's when I discovered Airbnb, cash flow, and I started making a good amount of money from there, which I still bought. I was buying that. I bought that property as a primary residence. I truly did live in it for a good 6 months. And then that's when I decided to rent it out full time. But I now had to live with in Surprise again. And I hated that commute. In my research, when doing research on real estate, I discovered what house hacking was. And that was where I could live in one of the units and rent out the other unit to pay for my mortgage. And that eliminated what I hated the most, which was mortgage payments or paying for rent. So at this time, I was now finally eligible for my VA loan. So I got with my real estate agent and I told her, hey, I want to find a place where I could live in one part of the unit and rent out the other. And we found a duplex out in Phoenix. It was for 300,000. I bought it with my VA loan. I lived in the back unit, and in the front unit, my plan was just to rent it. But she told me, "Hey, I have a friend. She does Airbnb, and what she can do for you is she'll be willing to rent the property from you as long as you allow her to run her Airbnb business." So I was only able to get maybe 1,200 bucks in rent for that property, but by renting it to her, she paid for the utilities and I charged her an extra. So I charged her an extra, I think total was like $1,600 a month. So I was able to live in this back unit for free, which was my total goal. So at this time, I had the two properties in Surprise that I purchased. I had the little condo in Scottsdale, and then I had this little duplex in Phoenix. I was still living for free. Things were going good. On my lunch breaks at work, I would go and clean the Airbnb in between guests. So it was pretty cool. I was making extra cash, nothing crazy, but I was ultimately still living for free. So it allowed me to save up a lot of money because I was living for free and I had a shorter commute to work, so didn't have to pay so much in gas either. I did that for about a year and a half, and the front renter, she came to me and said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. I'm moving. Me and my husband were moving back to Michigan." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I can either take all the furniture out or I can just leave the furniture in there if you don't charge me last month's rent. And I said, I don't know. I would just want to rent it long term. I don't want to do the Airbnb thing because I'm tired of cleaning. And that's when she told me that Airbnb is more of a business. So this is when I found out she had 10 of these properties that she does this for. She doesn't clean any of them herself. She doesn't even own any of them. All she did was rent them. And she would hire a cleaner. She would just make all the money in between from all the expenses. And that's when I realized, okay, how much money you pay me $1,600 a month. So how much money are you making a month on this thing? She said she was generating about $3,000 a month. So after expenses, she was making about $1,000 a month, which was pretty damn good. So I decided to start running that thing myself. I hired her cleaners. I hired her cleaners also to clean my condo. And then that's when I discovered Airbnb is a true business. And that's when I decided to do what I believe is my biggest mistake. I decided to sell my two rental properties in Surprise. I sold each of them for 350,000. So I made about $200,000 on each property and I reinvested those properties into bigger properties in Scottsdale and Tempe to buy Airbnbs and run them fully as Airbnbs. And I was making good cash flow. But what I didn't realize was everybody was doing this. Everybody was getting into this Airbnb market. And From initially, I was making good money. Now I had to kind of deal with the competition that there is today. At the time when I was investing and there was only about 2,500 Airbnbs in Scottsdale area. So I was doing pretty well. At this time, I was coming up on the end of my military contract. So get this, I was doing all this while still being in the military. And I decided and I realized, hey, if I achieved this success part time, what can I do full time? So I decided that I'm going to quit the military and get into real estate full time. And the only way that I think you could be in real estate full time, or that I thought at the time, which was 2 years ago, was get my real estate license. So what I did was I got out of the military, I got my real estate license, and I started selling real estate and managing Airbnbs for different clients. Now, that's what I do today. So we're fast forwarding. This is all coming up to 2 years ago. And what I do now is my first year as a real estate agent, I did 14 deals. My second year as a real estate agent, I did 25 deals, which is crazy good because the average realtor does only about 3 deals a year. So it was great. I'm killing it. I'm doing very well. Um, some regrets from my story. I wish I would have never sold those 2 houses. I could have just did a cash out refi, reinvested that money into rental properties, and still had the kept those assets. So I wish I would have done that. Fast forward today, I manage Airbnbs. I'm a real estate agent and I'm a real estate investor. So I still buy rentals today. My full-time job is a real estate agent and I manage Airbnbs for clients. So yeah, that's my story. Today I'm realizing that rentals are really good, but rentals are a long-term play. So rentals, although they made me some money and allowed me to live off of my cash flow, I still had to do the basics where I didn't have any debt. I My living expenses were low. I was living for free. Didn't have a car payment, so it was pretty easy to live off of 2,000 bucks a month. That's how I was able to be financially free. But I also realized that this money that I saved up to buy these rental properties, I save up all this money, put them into rentals, and that's it. My money's gone. And in 10 to 15 years, sure, I'll thank myself. And that's something I realized, that time is how people get financially free and financially wealthy in real estate, because they buy a property at X time and just let it grow and let it ride, and that's how they make money in real estate. So today my mindset has shifted, and I've now shifted to making a heavy active income and using any of your active income to invest in stocks, to invest in real estate, and kind of diversify your income. And then that's how you can truly grow and be wealthy. So today, my overall goal and my passion is educating people that have absolutely no idea what's going on in our world today. You always hear the quote, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. I think that's 100% true. And I think that's true all because the lack of knowledge. So my goal is now to educate people on truly what you need in life. And I truly believe the education system that we have today here in America doesn't prepare us for the world today, where we need money saving habits, budgeting, what is insurance, what's life insurance, what's rent, how to pay for rent, how to apply for a credit card, how to build your credit. All these things I is my goal, and that's why I started this podcast, Life, Learn Informal Education. So my goal is to educate as many people as I can, and hopefully successfully, by educating them, they could eventually use their income after they paid off their debts and use their income to invest and get one, two, three. I truly believe if you have 2 to 4 rental properties, you can change your life drastically. So that's my goal now. So I do one on one coaching. I'm in the process of creating an e course, like I talked about in the beginning. I'm going through different categories. I'm getting with different specialists. So I'm going with my insurance guy, my tax guy, all these different segments that you need in life, and I'm getting their specialty and their expertise in their field so that way we can build this course and give the best knowledge possible. That's my goal now, and that's where I am today. So, again, my name is Gerardo Hernandez. I'm located here in Arizona. I appreciate the love and support that you guys give me by listening to this podcast and sharing the podcast, following my social media. I truly believe that we as a whole can educate and have a better overall life, a better all overall American life if we truly just educate and help each other. And that's my goal. So thank you again for listening. Now you know who I am. I'm your host. So now moving forward, my story. So thank you again. And I hope you guys all enjoyed the show.